Okay, I would first of all like to say power to the people, power to the working class, power to the Black is Back Coalition, and power to the viewing audience. And first of all, and we can call it anti-apartheid. We can call it anti-segregation. We can call it, but this coalition today is called and or we could call anti-neocolonialism, which it is. But we're talking, but what is, today we're calling it colonialism, but what is colonialism? It's the military defeat of a country or community by another country or community that has better weapons. It takes the land and labor and resources and uses those resources for people other than the people who either live in those communities or live in those countries or live on the African continent. I would like to first of all say that the continent of Africa has the most valuable resources in the world to improve the quality of life of Africans at home and abroad. The world would come to a standstill if it were not for Africa. In fact, the resources on the African continent is the reason that we have technology today. Without the minerals and resources, for example, columbite for jet engines, there would be no jets. Copper for electricity for home, we wouldn't even have lights, computers, and all these other things we are using today. Uranium, which the atomic bomb, it took uranium to build the atomic bomb. We wouldn't even have that situation. Minerals for lithium are needed for special, for batteries, and also for aircraft, rockets, tanks. Also, 28% of the world's minerals production and crude oil comes from the continent of Africa. Also, in Africa, we have diamonds, not just the ones for your fingers, but diamonds that run machines. Gold, most of the gold on this earth come from Africa. 16 of the metals and non-metals minerals, 22 to 95% come from Africa. Heavy we have large iron, bauxites, aluminum, lumber. Heavy vegetation, they go around and used to fool most of us in this country about Africa was a jungle. It meant that Africa could grow one country and some could feed the whole continent of Africa and the whole world and still have, and we would still have food left over. At the same time, people are hungry. Why is that? Well, first, neocolonialism again. We are feeding the world, but we're not feeding people in Africa. That's what neocolonialism is. In fact, I read where some African countries are not even allowed to grow their own food. They have to export the food after it's grown to mostly Europe and some other countries. So education, we have enough material wealth to educate the continent of Africa and those of us who are scattered outside of Africa to have the necessary technical skills to build Africa. But in Africa, most of the you either pay for your own education or you don't get in at all. And then medical care. I heard that most of the leaders, when they do get sick, they go out of town to Europe and get medicine from the colonizer. And then the other people in Africa, most of them, there's thousands, let's say on average, I would say 40 or 50,000 people for one doctor, no doctors at all. And people in Africa, on the continent and in the places where we are scattered all over the world, are dying from diseases that can be cured. malaria and all other kinds of diseases that could easily be cured, but the neo-colonial leaders do absolutely nothing. People in America, in this country, every disease you name, Black people are 2 times as likely to be high blood pressure, diabetes, COVID-19 that we still have. We're dying at a ratio of 2 to 1. And that's because of the confinement. In St. Louis, for example, I had a tire plant where the parks are shut down as soon as Black people go into the neighborhood. For example, when I was 12 years old, the first action I took, they wouldn't even allow us to use the park once Black people started moving into the area. Well, I took and led the group and we shut it down, but they shut the pool down, closed it, concreted it, and built a pool about a fifth its size. That's right in Fairground Park in the city of St. Louis in the north side. Those of us who are scattered all over the world have similar problems. It doesn't matter whether we're in Africa or whether we are here any place else in the world. We are the highest rates of lack of food. We have food deserts in St. Louis. Lack of shelter. We have a huge homeless population. We're still tearing down houses instead of fixing up houses, but we're fixing the neo-colonial leaders, the Black leaders on the council, or the board of all the people with me, are voting for gentrification. Those who came before me in the 18th Ward built up the whole, what's called the Central West End in St. Louis. You couldn't sell a house at first, but now the houses in the Central West End, right? You couldn't sell a house in the 18th Ward in that area that I represent. Now the houses are going for between $300,000 and $500,000. Those are neo-colonial leaders with the housing, the medical care. They closed down what was called the Homer G. Phillips Hospital. They shut it down, public hospital. Now, and it took care of Black people in North St. Louis, but now Black people are dying from lack of medical care. The same thing with education. They are privatizing with charter schools. A neo-colonial leader, Senate Bill 781, was the one who proposed it instead of saying that the curriculum was inappropriate, poverty affects education, because I'm an educator. And so does the historical experience that we've had as African people. So we have these neo-colonial leaders who come up with and won't open their mouth and won't say boo about the system that create and captured us to come over here. And the police and then crime. Half our budget in the city as a city alderman, half of it almost go to the police for public safety, and we are no safer now than we were. In fact, we're less safe. But you think the neo-colonialists didn't vote for it? All of them voted for it. So they can't just say, give me a bunch of Black folk, because we had Black people ran St. Louis. We have what's called the E&A. That it controls the budget along with all the people. All Black. Every one of them on there Black. We had Black aldermen. The president of the board of aldermen, before he went to prison, he could set up any committee. He set up any committee and had an equal number of Black people on every committee. And with him, you had a majority on every committee. And you couldn't even, and I presented a bill, and he sent it, the Todd plan, which calls for full employment, not tearing down houses, but fixing them up, having parks, supervision and activities in parks, also making sure that the grass in the streets are repaired. He sent it to the most backwards white guy on the board, and it did die in committee, but I did pass a resolution for the Todd plan, which is the first time anyone has ever challenged it. And I will continue to work to make sure that these neo-colonialists do that job. Well, they're not going to do that job. We're going to have to get rid of them. And replace them with people from the Black is Back coalition. That's the kind of people we need. And democracy is control of resources. An anti-colonial structure worldwide will allow Africans at home and abroad to control our scarce resources at home and abroad. And other countries have a right to control their resources, but we have a right to control ours, both in the community where we are scattered all over the world, as well as on the African continent. We have the most resources that the world needs on the continent of Africa. Yet, Africa is the poorest and most undeveloped continent in the world. The same is true for Africans scattered all over the world. Why is this? It's because of neocolonialism. That's the only reason. They're being controlled, they're puppets. They are being controlled by their master, and we cannot depend on them. We have to replace them. And we get out here and we knock on doors and we organize, we can replace them. We will replace them abroad and at home. Finally, so we can use our resources to benefit us under the leadership of the African working class with a socialist government, and not a capitalist government, a socialist African government at home and abroad. Who in their right mind would say the same system that is a parasite, that is a vulture, that has robbed us of our rights and our ancestors for that right, would go around talking, I want to use the same system. You cannot, if you find me a chicken who can have some ducks, or you find me a cat who can have some puppies, then then I will believe that that system will work for us. It won't. So we can, okay, so we're going to use our resources for ourselves and put up an anti-colonial struggle under the leadership of the working class and of the socialist people. And I say, free the people, free the land, and free the resources of African people. Uhuru, comrades.